Hey, now it's Brace for Impact, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it's still the same. We're talking TNA wrestling. Man, we got some news to talk about. Hold on just one second. I am thankful for everybody for being here. Thank you for being Patreon subscribers. I know I sent some DMs to some folks. I'm just gonna let them know live now because I screwed up the feed this morning. I hold on just a sec. I do all this stuff so early in the morning. This is really bad radio. Okay, sorry. I had to send some DMs to the usual suspects and let them know, hey, yeah, I'm going live this morning. So because I do this thing, I have to wake up at like 5 in the morning and get all this stuff set up. And this morning I actually had to rewatch the main event of Impact, and I rewatched the 6-man tag or the trios match. Um, What's up, Josh? Thank you for being here all the way from the UK. Man, I greatly appreciate that. Josh, what time is it in the UK? Let me know. I don't even know. I guess I could look that up myself. But IO Productions in the house. What's up, brother? IO's one of the guys that I'll send a DM to. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that I'm actually going live. um, let's see. Yeah, he says happy Super Bowl weekend. Yeah, I'm going to be glad that this whole thing is over. Then I get to obsess over the free agency period and the NFL draft coming up. And IO, man, WWE releases again. Yep, and then it's 4 o'clock in the UK. So, okay, cool. Yeah, it's 6 a.m. here on Hawaii Standard Time. So, yeah, man, tons of WWE. Well, not tons, but there were several WWE releases yesterday. So we're gonna go ahead and get into that here in just a sec. Or actually, we'll go ahead and get started. Boom! I actually created a ticker for that. But yeah, so let's start earlier in the week. I know I covered this on I think Wednesday on my my card drop that I did. Um, I did a podcast in a car on Wednesday where I reviewed Raw. I talked about Jey Uso. I talked about other stuff happening. I talked about like the Jordan Grace news, like she had signed a 5-year contract with Fightful. All kinds of stuff. But one of the things I talked about, which was kind of sandwiched in, was the release of Duke Hudson. Now I don't know if he was like straight up released or if his contract expired. I don't know any of those details off the top of my head, but he is going to be available pretty soon because he was an NXT cat, and the NXT talent have a 30-day window, unless of course the contract just expires, and then they're ready to go as soon as their contract is done. So we'll see what happens with him. But Duke Hudson's a guy that I think TNA should give a shot to. He is of that Steve Macklin, W. Morrissey, like those type of cats. Like they're super talented, but WWE just couldn't figure out what to do with them. Well, in the case of W. Morrissey, he had the alcohol issues, so that's a different thing. But let's just focus on like Steve Macklin, or even Drew McIntyre, right? Like he got called up, and they didn't know what to do with the guy, and they tried to push him at first, but he wasn't ready, and he got made a comedy figure, and then they ended up releasing him. And then he went to TNA and he went around the indies and he made a name for himself and come back. I think Duke Hudson might be one of those guys. So I TNA should absolutely give that guy a shot. He's 34. He looks great. He's a big guy, and he can work a little bit. He's not a bad worker at all. I've seen him have some pretty good matches, and I thought the Chase U thing was pretty cool. So he's got some range, meaning like he can do some comedy stuff. He could be serious. He's a big bastard. So you would think that that's a guy that you'd want to get behind and bring him in. And I think we're all kind of counting down the days to when Joe Hendry's contract expires. You're going to need more guys to fill those positions, and he might be a guy. I'm not saying he's going to be Joe Hendry, but I'm saying he kind of checks a lot of boxes. So he's going to be a guy that you want to give a shot to. And he could come he can go into TNA, and if they got some good creative ideas for him, if he has some creative ideas for himself, he can completely change his character around and make a name for himself again, get himself back out there and become marketable. I think Duke Hudson's the perfect type of guy for TNA to try to rehab and remold and rebuild, and have been become part of their roster. So I wanted to start with Cedric, even though I'd already talked about him earlier, or not Cedric. I wanted to start with Duke, even though I talked about him earlier in the week, because I don't think that a lot of people caught my opinion of Duke. So Duke Hudson's the guy that I think TNA should bring in. All right, now let's get to the releases from yesterday. A lot of people were shocked. I was shocked. The first one being Cedric Alexander was released earlier on Friday. He said that he has not a 90-day window, and of course he thanked everybody. And he's a guy that's going to land on his feet. He's 35 years old. He's been around a long time. He's a great worker. Guy's never been over, so that's tough. He was in the Hurt Business, so I think people could connect those dots. Hurt Business is now in AEW doing the Hurt Syndicate. I don't think that act needs another body, to be honest with you. I know it started off with MVP going around and recruiting talent, but I think that I think they have settled in really nicely as a tag team with Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley. I know they want Bobby Lashley to kind of be their main star and then everybody else be like feeders for Bobby. But the Shelton and Bobby tag team is really cool. And I wouldn't want to ruin that dynamic. And they're basically baby faces now. So, and then we also have to remember that Tony Khan and Cedric Alexander have a little bit of history. So years ago, when AEW released Swole accused AEW of being racist, and Tony Khan took to Twitter when he probably didn't need to do this. It was a dumb idea. He took to Twitter and said, "No, we let her go because she was terrible." I was just like, "Oh my gosh," But he had to answer the people calling him a racist, right? He just didn't do it in the best possible way. It was like the dumbest thing he could possibly say. He's like, no, we fired her because she's terrible. But that's not what they told her. They told her it was budget cuts or whatever it was. And, and she's calling them a racist. And he said it wasn't true. And then he also said, look, we have other people of color in our company, and started naming other people in the company of color. And it just became a whole, like, once you start doing that, like you're already losing. It's a really hard thing. It's a really difficult thing for anybody to, when they're being called racist, to defend themselves against that. Right. There's a way to do it, and he just didn't do it very well, to say the least. Like, that's an understatement. He did a poor job of doing that. But he basically bashed Swole in public, which he shouldn't have done. You got to, as an executive, you got to be above it, right? You let your minions do that for you. Like, Triple H is never going to publicly bash somebody, but what he'll do is, like, Le Gentle will feed certain friendly media partners, which there's a lot of them, and then that's how they get that word out. Like, there's like a way to do it, and so Tony blew that one, and he got a lot of heat for it, deservedly so. And Cedric, of course, probably is not a big fan of Tony because of that. Now, that was a few years ago, and time and money can heal all wounds. But Cedric recently, when that video of CM Punk came out, where he punked Jungle Boy in the backstage area, the incident that ultimately led to him being fired, where he threatened Tony with his life, where Tony was cowering in fear because he thought he was going to die because CM Punk yelled at him. Cedric kind of made fun of that situation on Twitter too. So I don't think that him going to AEW is a foregone conclusion. Now, like, business is business, and Tony Khan's a businessman, and he would have to be the bigger man there. And there's people within the company that are going to be advocating for him. You would assume that MVP and Shelton and Bobby would want him to come in. But I'm taking a look at that act, and I'm like, I don't think they need a third body. I just don't see a reason why they would need him over there. AEW has way too many people as it is. They actually need to get rid of. They need to do what WWE just did. I know that sounds mean, but like, they need Elon Musk and his Doge company to go into AEW and kind of, like, there's a lot of waste happening, right? A lot of people are being signed, getting paid a lot of money, and they don't do anything, right? So I don't think that Tony Khan and AEW need to add Cedric. Although if they did add him, that would be fun. Cedric's a really good wrestler. He is a really good wrestler. I've been watching him. I didn't really watch indies back in the day, so I can't really advocate for his indie stuff. But I just remember him coming in as on the what do they call it? The Cruiserweight Classic, which is where he got signed, and I thought he was fantastic. And Io says 205 Live, Cedric Alexander. Yeah, you might have been one of the very few people that watched 205 Live, but he has ties to TNA. Obviously, Mustafa Ali was a rival of his on that show. He trained Tessa Blanchard, or one of Tessa Blanchard's trainers, and so and I know that they wanted to bring him in. This is, of course, a couple of regimes ago, but they wanted to bring him in before he went to WWE. So I think that Cedric would be a good pickup, but I wouldn't like. I really like Cedric. I'm not trying to be mean, but the guy just has never been over. That's the problem with Cedric. Great wrestler, never been over. And so when you're bringing in great wrestlers that don't have like that type of charisma, you run a risk, because it's like, can he develop the charisma? Well, he couldn't in WWE, so it becomes difficult. I see Duke Hudson a little bit different. Duke Hudson has charisma. They just couldn't figure out what to do with him. Cedric, I don't know that he's got top guy charisma, but he could develop that, or maybe it just didn't work on WWE. Maybe he has small room charisma and he needs to come to TNA and work that out. And he would have the time to develop that, and he'd get more focus put on him, bigger fish in a smaller pond. So I think that could work. But Cedric's fantastic. I hope that he gets picked up. I'd love to see him in TNA. I don't really think that that's a guarantee. I don't think that it's a guarantee that he would go to AEW. He could also be a guy that does. Yeah, Josh has a good point here. He says I could see him going to Japan for a bit. I could see him, doing Japan, Best of Super Juniors, stuff like that, and then kind of touring the indies and making decent coin that way. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that in 90 days we're going to see Cedric Alexander TNA. Although I think it was Gerard made the joke that wow, looks like we're going to get another Slammiversary built off of WWE releases. So that was pretty helpful to them back in the day. The one that caught me off guard the most, though, was Sonia Deville. She was in she had just joined a new faction, the Pure Fusion Collective, whatever they're called, with Shayna Baszler and who's the other one, the blonde? I can't remember her name. Zoe Stark, Pure Fusion Collective. So she was just in the Royal Rumble. So I was shocked to see her name. Now, I don't think that she's a particularly great wrestler. She's not bad, but she's not like a can't miss type of wrestler. She was doing an MMA gimmick. She came in and her whole gimmick was MMA, but she didn't really have like an MMA background. She wasn't really a fighter. I think she might have done some training, but that was it. But she did like a little bit of training and parlayed that into getting signed by WWE, but she wasn't really like an actual fighter. And at the time they had brought in Ronda Rousey and, I met her in Afghanistan. I met Shayna in Afghanistan with the Jessamine Duke. They brought in Jessamine, and then they brought in the other one, Roderick Strong. I need more coffee. Hold on, swig of coffee for my brain. Roderick Strong's wife that's in Death Riders. I just can't remember her name off the top of my head. But they brought all of them in, and it's like, oh, well, they actually did fight. But now you got Sonya Deville, who's going around telling everybody that she's a fighter, and she never really was. But I don't see her go. Marina Shafir, thank you, Io. Thank you, Marina Shafir. I don't see Sonya Deville in TNA. I just don't see it. Could be wrong. I think they would probably want her. I think they would make an offer, but she seems like would be pretty content not wrestling in like a smaller company. I don't think she gets picked up by AEW either. I think that she's probably made some decent money, and there's other ways for her to earn, right? And she doesn't need to go back into wrestling. She doesn't need to go out there and hustle. I just never really saw it in her, to be honest with you. Not that she's like bad, she's not, but she's not anybody that I'm just like you need to have in your company. I just don't think she has it like that. I think at one point she was the GM or something too. So, Io says unless her and Mandy Rose are back together, that's my only interest in her. Yeah, I mean they could, because we need teams. Obviously, they might be teaming up on some like internet content. Like that would be my thing. Is like where they're going. AOP, I am not surprised by this one at all. I was surprised that they brought them back, especially after they screwed over a bunch of wrestlers, booking them in the UK, and it turned out it was just this big money laundering scam, like a big crypto scam, and they got tons of heat over it, including a lot of people in TNA who cleared their weekends for that event in the UK and never got paid. And Moose was one of those people. Now I don't know if Moose cares, but because he makes pretty decent coin, but there was a lot of people booked for that event, and they got screwed over out of a payday. And AOP was leading the charge on that. They were the ones booking people. They had a money guy. It turns out it was just this big crypto money laundering scam, and and yeah, a bunch of people got screwed over, and then they ended up going back to WWE. And I'm just like, that shocks me. I thought their original act when they were there with Paul Ellering in NXT, I thought they were great in NXT. And when they got called up to the main roster, I thought they were going to be perfect for the main roster, but for whatever reason, Vince just didn't get behind them. I don't know if they were just too stiff with people. I don't know what it was, but when they got released originally, I think it was during the pandemic, I was all in on TNA bringing those guys in. I thought that would have been a smart move because I thought they were a great act, and they're big bastards. They had good matches in NXT. Maybe they didn't have them in and on the main roster, but at the main roster, it's like you got to like, who are they working? And they weren't really having a ton of great matches on the main roster at the time. Like nobody was, but in NXT they were cool, and they got released, and I was like, TNA should bring them in 100%, and they just never did. And I think it's because like they're only coming in for a certain amount of money, and they weren't really out there working the indies either. So TNA shouldn't even I wouldn't even pick up the phone and call these guys. I think they're probably just done. They're gonna go be stuntmen or something like that. They're not guys that love pro wrestling. They wanted to be WWE. So when they got released, they never really went out there and hustled and worked the indies and improved their game. They came back because Triple H always believed in them and liked them, and it was not him that released them, it was Vince. But now Triple H has lost faith in them. And so they're back out there. So I'm like, no, not worth it. Paul Ellering, their manager, also got released. They're all together. They're all in act. Paul Ellering's in his 70s. And I thought it was nice that they're keeping him around and keeping him employed. Triple H is obviously a fan. You know, he was the original manager of the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom, in all their different stints. And so, he's got history and clout. But I don't think anybody's looking for Paul Ellering to get more gigs. He seems to be doing just fine. So, I don't think that he's going to be going into a TNA, and I'm sure if Tony Khan wanted him to do stuff, he would go, but that's not something anybody needs to worry about. Now the most interesting name of all of them, at least for this podcast, is Blair Davenport, one B Priestley, who was a star over in Stardom. She worked in Japan for years. She actually did some New Japan stuff too. Not like wrestling, but she was Osprey's girlfriend, and she was on New Japan television for a while before she got signed. I think they ended up breaking up whenever she went to WWE, which kind of happens. That's like a it's like don't let your girlfriend sign with sign with NXT. She ain't coming back. So, unless you're there with them, they're not coming back. That's kind of how that business operates over there. But she's, of all of them, like, she would be the one. If I were TNA, I would absolutely 100% make a full-on pitch to bring her in. I think she's great. I'm a little surprised that she never got over in WWE for whatever reason. I don't know what that is. Like, maybe she just didn't fit in. It just didn't work out. But she was like a talent that I thought kind of ticked every box for them. She can work. She's got personality. I don't know if she's a great promo or not. I think I've seen her promo before, but I think this company needs her, to be honest with you. Like, AEW doesn't need her. She could always go back to Japan. She could always go back to the UK. But TNA, after what I saw this week, like, they need her bad. I would make a full-on pitch. If I were Anthem, I'd call up Gail Kim right now and be like, look, you need to fly to wherever she's at. She's probably in Orlando, and TNA is going to be there next week. You need to go to her house, and we're going to set up a meeting, and let's go all in on this one. Like, of all of them, this is the one that they need to get. Because what I saw this week on TNA, as far as their women's division goes, as far as the Knockouts division, it's pathetic right now. It is bad. They signed Xia Li, and she's never here, but they made this big stink about her signing. She showed up in December, and we haven't seen her since. So, they lost Jordan Grace. They signed Xia Li, who doesn't come to work. She was working indies. I think she was in Japan or something like that for these last couple of sets of tapings. And I don't know. I don't know if she's advertised for the Full Sail shows or not. I couldn't tell you. We got Kylan King coming back, Killer Kelly hopefully coming back. But the division is reeling. It is in a really tough spot. So I think they could use another talent there, because what I saw this week on TV was just it was not good. Josh, I don't think that this matters. Like, I don't think that would preclude anybody from getting a job. I don't think that. So, but this is where I would put all my investment. Like, of all of these people, even though I'm a big Cedric fan, I think Cedric would be a great guy to bring in. But where's the need? I think the need is in the Knockouts division, and the need is in Blair Davenport B. Priestley. She would absolutely be a great opponent for Masha. Masha, Joshi trained too, right? Does a lot of work in Japan. I think, like, that's your Slammiversary co-main event right there. That's where I would go. I'm not saying she needs to win the title, but that would be the best possible matchup that you can make with all the talent available that's out there. Masha versus B would be great. Let's see. Yeah, Drake. Yeah, Killer Kelly should be coming back hopefully soon. And then we have no chance of Cedric. MVP on the phone 30 minutes. Yeah, but I don't think that's a guarantee. I don't think so. But Tony can be swayed. Tony has a lot of respect for MVP, and Tony has a lot of respect for, Shelton and Bobby Lashley. So if they advocate for him hard enough, I could see them bringing him in. I just don't think it's a guarantee. But like I just don't see it happening with TNA. I just don't. B. Priestley is something that could absolutely happen. So that's where I would focus my efforts. So you get B. Priestley, and then Nixon Newell is available, obviously, and she could. I don't know where she's going, but she is whatever her time frame, that's come and gone. So she's available now, and I think Indy Hartwell is probably coming in. I don't know about Nixon. Nixon could end up in AEW. Who knows? But Indy Hartwell's like, she just dust. Like, she's not a good wrestler, but she can do the comedy stuff, and so they like that. And as we saw this week, they love bad comedy, and that's what she brings to the table. So, but I think that she's in. So you get those two. You get Killer Kelly and Kylan King back. You sign B. Priestley, Nixon Newell, Indy Hartwell. You've totally transformed the division. You're back at full strength at that point, right? There's tag team options you can make. There's all kinds of stuff you could do. I don't see them going to get all of them, but they should, because they have nobody. They had an entire Knockouts Battle Royal with 8 people that completely exposed how weak that division is. It's brutal. It's the worst it's ever been. So they need something. They need a lot of help.